My name is Edith Keeley. I'm delighted to be the moderator for today's Human-Centered Design for Social Programs virtual event, sponsored by the National Association for Welfare Research and Statistics. This is the second in a three-part series that NAWRS is sponsoring this summer to keep us all engaged and educated about important topics in human services. We'll be announcing more information about the third workshop in the series at the end of today's presentation, so please stand by for that. Just a few housekeeping notes before we get started. First of all of the attendee lines are muted, but that doesn't mean that we don't want your participation. So we will be hosting a Q&A session at the end of the presentations. Please enter your questions at any point during today's webinar by using the Q&A function in WebEx. If you hover your mouse, there should be on the screen a section labeled Q&A, and just type in your question at any time and we will field those at the end. So we're looking forward to some good interactive exchanges with our panelists. This workshop is being recorded and we expect to have it available on the NAWRS website. So if you have colleagues who were not able to join us today, please feel free to refer them to the website if you think they would be interested in learning about the discussion today. So without further ado, I want to introduce our stellar lineup of panelists today. First, we will hear from Blair Corcoran de Castillo from the lab at the Office of Personnel Management. Blair is a passionate public servant who has spent the majority of her professional life working on programs to improve the lives of marginalized groups in the U.S. and abroad. Prior to joining the lab, Blair worked at the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services Administration for Children and Families, where she managed, advised, and provided technical assistance to a portfolio of grants that provided pathways out of poverty through careers in the healthcare field. Before joining the government, she worked at the World Bank, where she supported the design and delivery of capacity-building programs that fostered responsive and responsible public governance across the globe. Blair also designed and facilitated e-learning courses on policies for growth and rethinking the development paradigm for policymakers, practitioners, and students of development economics worldwide. Now, as a design strategist with the lab, Blair leads design projects, teaches human-centered design to fellow federal employees, and uses her passion for public service and design to connect federal innovators across the government. Blair studied government at Cornell University, received her master's in public policy from George Mason University, and is currently completing her master's in strategic design and management from Parsons School of Design in New York. I'm also delighted to welcome fellow New Yorker Mari Nakano to today's presentation. Mari is the acting director at the Service Design Studio with the New York City Mayor's Office for Economic Opportunity. Mari has an obsession with problem solving through the lens of design. She has been practicing what design can do for products, services, and teams in the social impact space for over 12 years, and has worked with notables such as the United Nations Population Fund, Women Deliver, PepsiCo, and Design Continuum. Prior to joining the New York City Mayor's Office as Acting Director for Design, she served for 4 years as the Design and Interaction Lead for UNICEF's Office of Innovation, where she orchestrated the production and execution of designed materials and processes across a multidisciplinary global team of innovators focused on developing forward-thinking solutions to improve the lives of children around the world. She is the recipient of the 2015 Art Center Young Innovator Alumni Award and a contributor to the award-winning LEAP Dialogues, Career Pathways in Design for Social Innovation. And finally, we're delighted to welcome a colleague from the Mountain region. Sasha Easton is an ardent changemaker with the goal to design service thinking and collective impact to enhance workforce development strategies, partner collaboration, participant programming, and service delivery. As the Talent and Workforce Engagement Manager at Arapahoe Douglas Works Workforce Center in the Denver metropolitan area, Sasha promotes regional collaborations and strategies that positively impact the economic well-being of its residents. Sasha has over 10 years public interest experience building partnerships and impactful programming with the goal to serve priority populations with multiple barriers to employment. Sasha obtained both her JD degree and bachelor's degree from the University of Denver. We'd also like to acknowledge today, in particular, the sponsorship of APT Associates, who is making this webinar possible. Thank you so much to APT for that. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Blair, who will get us started.
Great, thank you. Okay. Just sharing my screen. Okay. So thank you very much, Edith. My name is Blair Corcoran de Castillo, and I'm really honored to be a part of this panel and speaking with you all today. I'm a design strategist at the lab at the Office of Personnel Management, also known as the lab at OPM. And we were founded back in 2012 in an effort to make the government an employer of choice again. The director of OPM at the time was really interested in building new ways of working for the federal workforce. And after doing a landscape review of kind of the innovative methodologies out there, he and his team came across human-centered design and felt like it was the right fit. And in this, it was the right fit for government. And in this talk, I'll be sharing a bit more about why. So the lab's mission since then has been to build an innovative and creative federal government by building the capacity of government employees in human-centered design. And we strongly believe that putting people at the center of our problem-solving process will enable the government to better design solutions that meet public sector challenges. And we build the capacity for human-centered design in three ways: by leading events on innovation and design, and by teaching and practicing human-centered design with our federal partners and federal employees. So as interest grows in design and innovation in government, we're regularly hosting events on both. In fact, we just hosted an event for our alumni, and we quarterly host events for our federal innovation community. And while we practice human-centered design as a way to bring innovation to government, we realize that other folks don't, and so we are constantly partnering with other parts of the government to figure out how they do innovation and how that could work with human-centered design to bring better services to the American people. So let's get into what human-centered design is. There are a lot of conversations that we have with folks, and even if there are more and more government employees who are familiar with human-centered design, we still get a lot of questions about, why design in government? And we argue because design has to do with everything. And I think that sometimes the hang-up is often about the definition or the perception of what design is. At least that was for me when I was first introduced to it. I really thought that design was just about fashion and making things that look really great, but it's really about so much more. So here's a great quote that we often share, and it's from Paula Antonelli from MoMA. She says that people think design styling. Design is not style. It's not about giving shape to the shell and not giving a damn about the guts. Good design combines technology, cognitive science, human need, and beauty to produce something that the world didn't know was missing. And that's what good design is for us at the lab. It's about giving a damn about the guts. In government, we're always working on the guts, tinkering with the nuts and bolts of policy as we try to administer it, implement it, or regulate it. Here's another quote about design and who designers are. Everyone designs who devises courses of action aimed at changing existing situations into preferred ones. Public service is all about changing existing solutions into preferred ones, or constantly creating better products and services for the American people. And when I was first introduced to this quote, this is when I really started to feel like a designer, and this is when it usually resonates with others as well. But I mean, humans at our core are naturally designers. We've been crafting and improving things for as long as our big brains and opposable thumbs have allowed for it. Our impulse and ability to design has led to some of the greatest achievements in fine arts, but also to commercial craft and technological development. And over time, design began to change, just like everything else. Industry and commerce created the imperative to define more reliable and repeatable processes for developing novel, desirable goods for mass production. This accelerated the standardization of design methods into specialized vocations, and it also drove the search for generalizable principles of design. And human-centered design is really just a continuation of the early work to master and manage human creativity to the world's ever-changing needs. Today we call this innovation, and it's no longer simply the work of industrialists, but it's about and for anyone looking to create lasting value or meaningful change in our increasingly complex, dynamic, and interconnected world. So this is the lab's definition of human-centered design. You can Google, there are a lot of them out there, but I think that at the end of the day, they're all founded on the same things. Ours is the discipline of navigating complex problems and creatively designing effective solutions to meet real people's needs. And what makes this, I think, human-centered design a little bit different is it's a relatively new orientation towards design, which is characterized less by its products, but by its processes. And so it's not about the predefined material outcome like fashion or a shoe or something like that. It's about solving problems, creating opportunities, and meeting needs. And government is all about solving problems, creating opportunities, and meeting needs. And what's interesting is that, human-centered design is not really a new way of working to solve problems. Because it borrows and incorporates a number of other disciplines and methodologies that are listed here that I'm sure all of you are familiar and adept at. But what makes it different is that it prioritizes human needs over all other considerations. And sometimes in government, we get caught up in the policy needs and our policy mandates and what the legislation says. And sometimes, as a result, our products become policy-centered instead of human-centered. And human-centered design is a discipline that helps people and organizations keep humans in the focus of their programs, policies, services, et cetera, to make sure that it actually meets human needs. So I'll get into this free and reduced school lunch program form redesign at the end. But although human-centered design largely came from private industry, it's really uniquely suited to the work of government, where serving people's needs is good policy, sound strategy, and just really our mission. And so design and government are both about solving problems, creating opportunities, and meeting people's needs, so they're really compatible. And what I think is interesting as well is that design isn't really new to government either. Back in the 1970s, the Nixon administration established the Federal Design Improvement Program to improve graphics and architecture in the government. And part of this included 2 design assemblies to discuss the work that was happening and share how design can have an impact in government and public services. And one of the results was a publication called The Design Necessity. And it included this statement: effective design of public service is itself an essential public service. And this is something that we at the lab really believe as well. So we've been working in government now for since 2012, so that's just 5+ years, I think. And we've seen it benefit the government in the following ways. It gives teams new tools to the ever complex and changing problems that land on our desks. It gives us different methods to get to the right solution faster instead of just focusing on symptoms and quick wins. It's also can be used as an organizational change management tool because it really re-energizes employees because it engages all stakeholders that are touched by or involved in the product, policy, whatever it is you're designing. It leverages creativity and blue sky aspirations. It's really it brings out really the best in the people that we're working with. And it promotes productive interdisciplinary collaboration, which I think we do in government, but sometimes we could do it more just because there are people sitting in the cube next to us or down the hall or across the street, and we're working on similar things, so we don't always have the time to work with them. And so this kind of forces us to try to. So I did want to share one example. We've worked across sectors in the government, defense, workforce, social service, health. So it really varies, but I thought that I'd share one example that comes from the social services, and it's the USDA school lunch program. And for those of you that aren't familiar, but I'm sure that many of you are, USDA's Food and Nutrition Service operates the National School Lunch Program, and it's a it's a meal program that provides nutritionally balanced, low-cost or free lunches to 30 million children living at or below poverty each day. And they came to us because they had an issue, and what they were seeing was that, they reimburse school districts for the meals that they provide to individuals who qualify for it. And they saw that there was a potential for $1.8 billion in improper payments actually going to schools that was incorrect. And so the lab and FNS teamed up and tried to figure out why that was happening. This project was focused on the end-to-end process of applying for reduced or free school lunches and better understanding the agency reimbursement mechanism. So our team went out, did research, looked at the existing applications, looked at the policies. They went out to schools, they talked to principals, food school workers, they talked to parents. And what they realized was that there were some unique experiences, systemic challenges, and unmet needs that hindered parents from enrolling in this essential program. And one of those things was this form. This form was the form that the parents had to fill out to get their child enrolled, and there were quite a few issues with it. A number of things came out from actually going out and working with parents. We actually sat and watched parents fill it out. We tried to fill it out ourselves. We noticed that, as you can see here on the fourth page, all the instructions were actually at the back. And so parents were constantly either flipping back and forth or completing the application, and then at the end realizing they did something wrong and having to go back and do it again. The boxes were very small, so it was hard for people with long names to actually get their complete names in. There are so many lines for children, so if you had more children than there were lines, then your financial income was not being properly represented. It was also requiring a Social Security number, which was intimidating some of the individuals who are undocumented here in the States, but who are whose children are able to benefit from this program. And so it was through the ethnographic research, the design research, going out, actually partnering with D.C. and Prince George's County Public Schools right outside of D.C., their school districts, working with their parents, principals, and teachers to understand what goes on, that we revealed these insights. And we went through and iterated on a number of different applications. This is the one that we ended up with, but we went through a number. And what you'll see here is that now the form includes the relevant instructions next to it. There are boxes for letters so that you can clearly write your name. It also gives you information about if you have more children than their space, what you do about that. There is actually an additional page, but that's because there were some legal requirements that had to be on there that we just couldn't get around. But, changes in this program that serves millions of students can really drive significant impact and financial and social impact. And so the project was expected to save $600 million by the 2019-2020 school year. And what's great is that this new application would improve children's access to the critical government service. And it really empowered members of the USDA Food Nutrition Service to solve other challenging problems using human-centered design, because they got training and they learned by doing, working next to us. And actually, the USDA has gone on, they did a crowdsourcing version of this to do digital applications as well. So they've gone on and evolved their application process since we've worked with them. And so that's just one interesting case example of how we use human-centered design to drive change in the federal government. But I just want to leave you with one comment before we go on to our other esteemed panelists. You don't choose what challenges come to your desk, but you do decide how to respond. This is a quote that we think about a lot. And in government, there are a lot of different ways to do things. But if you ever find yourself constantly trying to solve the same problem or constantly being faced with the same issue over and over again, maybe you should try a new way to respond, and maybe you should try human-centered design. And if you do, here are some things that we found to be successful in using human-centered design. Build support internally. Co-create. Engage members of your team. Try to experiment and test on small-scale things and work together to believe anything's possible. Try to build an innovation mindset. You know, start with an example of a design thinking or human-centered design project worked, and talk with your office and other folks about how it could help you do your job better and impact your team. And then try it in small ways with your own team and on your own work. Build a diverse and creative team. You know, look for people who you don't always work with. Look for people with different skills, background, perspectives, and personalities than you and who you and your team usually work with. And always ask questions when you're told no. We found so much that there are ghost regulations, regulations that everyone thinks are regulations or legislation or mandates that don't actually exist but are just been perceived to be policy. Always ask, where does it say that? And most importantly, measure and communicate your results. You know, think about, as you're designing things, what's really important to the people that you're serving, and make sure that you're always trying to measure whether you're succeeding at that. And finally, we'd love to keep in touch and learn more about what you're doing. Our classes are open to federal, state, and local employees, and actually the general public. We're interested in working with people who are interested in human-centered design and government. We host events, so if you're interested in coming to them, sign up for our lab listserv, which is on here, and then you can follow us on Twitter, or feel free to email me or our general lab inbox. But really love to learn how others are using human-centered design in social services and government. So thanks so much for your time, and looking forward to hearing the other conversations. And Mari, I think I'm turning it over to you.
Great, thanks so much, Blair. Okay, let me just get into presentation mode here. Hi, everyone. So depending on where you might be connecting from, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I just wanted to give a special shout out to the NYC Mayor's Office for Economic Opportunity for those on the line, and it's just an honor to be with other women leading the way in human-centered design. So thanks so much. My name is Mari Nakano. I'm the Acting Design Director for the Service Design Studio located in New York City. I'll give you a download of the Service Design Studio and our services, and then share 2 case studies of how we've applied design in social services. So designers have a natural obsession with order and process. Design is powerful because it can, if practiced and applied well, sort through, untangle, and help us focus on our end goals, which for the studio is about decreasing poverty and increasing equity for New Yorkers. Government's full of complexities, as we all know, and our job is to organize and find clarity through the muck. So when you combine our obsession for order and process with our deep desire to design a strong city, and then match that with clear focuses, design methods, and strategies, this is what shapes our practice and our aim to provide new and different approaches with our colleagues, approaches which have been carried over from the world of design. So NYC is a city of about 8.5 million people. There are over 300,000 public servants and over 70 agencies here. There's a lot of work to do within the city. Our team is rather small in relation to this, so you might wonder, well, if they're so small, like, how are they able to be effective? So to reach all New Yorkers, we have 2 core pillars of offerings. One is focused on capacity building in the city, and the other is about doing the work itself. Building capacity means that part of our practice is about creating design tools and building opportunities which enable our colleagues to practice and embed design thinking into their work. And doing the work means doing just that, supporting the design and user testing of existing services and products and helping build new ones. We work closely with partnering agencies to co-design solutions, both digital and in person, and I'll talk through some of these in more context in the upcoming slides. So how is the Service Design Studio set up? The Service Design Studio is an internal resource available for NYC government agencies and offices, supporting the city to further engage with residents and those who deliver services so that their insights can shape new and existing programs. We're part of the Mayor's Office for Economic Opportunity, which is comprised of a multidisciplinary team of about 70 people who facilitate interagency data sharing and integration, who develop and manage best-in-class digital products, who evaluate, manage, and research programs to help drive evidence-based policymaking. We really reinforce one another and bring together our skills to reduce poverty and increase equity for low-income New Yorkers. The Service Design Studio team, as I mentioned, is made up of a core group of 4. We are comprised of creatives with backgrounds in policy, planning, graphic and digital design, user experience and design research, and experience in developing impersonal and digital services with a focus on addressing poverty-related challenges. We also have an apprenticeship program where we train up students and recent graduates in service design methodology, so this is an additional capacity that helps us out a lot. And opposed to being an external consultant or kind of floating appendage, we're nestled within a larger innovative team here at NYC Opportunity, which is a huge factor in how we're able to take on the work that we do. Our practice is called civic service design. It's a practice of creating better understanding and improving upon government programs at any stage by focusing on the actual experiences of the humans involved, from those who deliver services to the end users who receive the service. When we put in an empathetic lens on our work that considers and includes the whole experience of the people, processes, communications, and technologies involved in a service, we're really rooting ourselves in much deeper insights to better inform our solutions. We believe in making public services effective and accessible for all New Yorkers and believe design can really help us reach the hardest to reach. And we anchor ourselves in these core principles you see here. Civic service design is about actively including the people who use and deliver our services, gathering feedback often and early on to mitigate risks and make an idea more resilient in the end. It's about creating accessible services, lowering the barriers to entry, and focusing on distributing our services equitably so the resources we build get to those who need them the most. We must continuously test, evaluate, and improve our services based on our clients' needs so that these services remain effective and impactful. We really want to help create a city with services that are sustainable, scalable, and socially just, and where people really feel like, yes, we really built this together. We use these design tactics that act as the scaffolding around our work. These tactics are framed in ways that are easy to understand and applied and stripped of design jargon. So set the stage. This is where we review the current landscape of our service, and this often takes the form of desk research. So more and more, we've been pulling in our program and evaluation team who've been supporting with best practices that enhance our design research. And we combine that with talk to people, where we go out and talk to the stakeholders who are touching our services, from the agency leadership and staff involved to the service providers and communities who deliver and receive our services. Connect the dots is when we sort through our observations and insights and find themes and patterns that help us decide where we want to focus and what we want to test. And once we have an idea, we try things out and start turning our insights into actions in lightweight, low risk, and cost-saving ways. This is in the vein of prototyping, and we take this time in our phase to test things out before making larger commitments. Focus on impact is really about how we deliver solutions, so we must look at our solutions regularly, evaluate and measure them so that we can be sure we built the right thing that is delivering the intended outcomes. How can government promote and foster a human-centered design-oriented approach? So I'll share with everyone a few ways we're promoting design in the city. Civic Service Design Tools and Tactics is a field book, website, and binder of templates and materials for colleagues to help them start painting a clearer picture of their service in context. These tools provide an introduction to service design for public servants and offer practical ways to include design methods in one's work. They are written in non-design jargon language, plain and simple, and everything's open source. You can all actually go to civicservicedesign.com to download materials or actually attend one of our office hours, and we'll be happy to give you some of these materials. That being said, moving on to office hours. So every week we offer 4 one-hour slots for government agencies. Actually, there's some folks from the lab at OPM in the photo up there on the upper left corner. We offer 4 one-hour slots for government agencies and offices in NYC and beyond to sit with us and talk shop. So since our official launch, which was just last October 2017, we've offered nearly 100 office hours and touched on over 40% of NYC agencies. So our goal next year is to really connect with 80% of those agencies and offices. These are some of the common themes that have emerged. Topics range from program and outcome-focused support, like how to test new programs or services, or how to build digital products or campaigns. We also consulted on organizational and internally focused topics like how to streamline department processes and how to train up or get trained up on design thinking. We're now seeing more people come back for follow-ups and more nuanced questions around things like how to work design or design research phases into an RFP, or advisement around strategic activities for stakeholder meetings and workshops. And because we're meeting more people through these office hours, we're also able to connect colleagues to one another when we spot agencies tackling similar issues. We believe in celebrating our colleagues, so we've identified design champions like Shika Mittal here. We believe part of building capacity is about elevating our colleagues and having them teach others through design, so you can read about her and other design champs on our blog. We really try to build up our community in NYC, and the bi-monthly civic design forums are another way we are bringing colleagues together to not only test new creative approaches, but to share the good work that the city is doing around design. We work in partnership with DoIT's GovLab and Studio and NYC Digital to share best design and digital practices, and always attract a pretty packed room like you see here. A new offering that we're developing and that takes hungry colleagues on a deeper dive of service design methods are our workshops and trainings. We'll be officially launching regular workshops in the fall this year, and in the meantime are prototyping our workshop curriculums with our office hour colleagues, forum goers, and other government and civic tech peers. So what have we learned from all of this? That we need to give our colleagues free and open tools. We need to provide dedicated moments to listen and engage with them. We need to collaborate with like-minded partners and challenge ourselves to design with our skeptics as well. And when hungry, we need to feed our colleagues more. So how is human-centered design applied to social services? I'll give you two case studies, one into redesigning a platform and one that's in progress and looking more at service, the service experience. So here's Access NYC. Access NYC is an online public screening tool that New Yorkers can use to determine their eligibility for city, state, and federal health and human service benefit programs. I'll give you some background around its redesign last year and then tell you a little bit more about how we supported in building a tablet version for the public engagement unit under the NYC Human Resources Administration. So as mentioned earlier, there are about 8.5 million New Yorkers. Over 20% of them live in poverty and over 45% of them live in near poverty. What we know is that when New Yorkers access benefits, the poverty rate can be reduced or lowered. So here are some examples of our office's poverty measure report, which shows things like how poverty can be reduced by 5.8%, for example, if people are given housing subsidies. We asked ourselves, so what barriers do New Yorkers face when trying to seek information about or apply for benefits? Or how might we improve the digital experiences of accessing benefits in New York City? We worked with our product and design team to redesign, re-platform, and relaunch Access NYC in March of 2017 to become a mobile-friendly front door to the city's benefits programs. Today, Access NYC features a 10-step eligibility screener that screens for 31 programs like cash assistance, low-cost health insurance, and money for heating your home. It has comprehensive information on how to apply, required documentation, how to receive assistance for over 40 programs, and it's now available in 11 languages. It features an interactive map that you can use to find help nearby, and it's written in plain language at a 5th grade level and holds up to the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines and the U.S. Digital Web Standards. You can check it out, play around with it, or if you're a New Yorker, you can try and screen yourself. Since the relaunch, the total number of New Yorkers completing the eligibility screening process per month has increased from 5,000 to 8,400 people on average. The rate of screener completion has increased to 67% on average in the last year as well, which really indicates to us that more people are steps closer to applying and receiving benefits. The redesign has gone through an iterative prototyping process that engages residents, social workers, case managers, and government agency staff. There's 2 detailed case studies around the design, research, prototyping, and technical strategy and development to deliver this, which you can read on our blog. But today I'll kind of go into a bit more about what we're doing with the public engagement unit on their PEU screener. So the public engagement unit is a city street team. Their outreach specialists meet residents where they are in their communities to directly connect with government benefit programs and services. They engage with residents through activities like targeted door knocking, phone calls, resource fairs, and community meetings. So with regard to public access public benefits, PEU acts as a personal entry point. Access NYC acts as a digital entry point, so it seemed like a natural opportunity to partner. Our teams got together to think about how we could enable PEU outreach specialists to comprehensively screen their clients for a wide range of benefits and to imagine what it would look like to help their clients apply for additional programs utilizing the technology and work done for Access NYC. We approached this process with a service design lens. We conducted observations in the field, shadowing specialists in the middle of like 100-degree summers doing door knocking, outreach. We conducted one-on-one interviews to get a deeper understanding of the work and challenges from the specialists themselves. We facilitated collaborative journey mapping sessions with them to externalize what we were hearing and seeing and tied it all together. And we really brought that whole our project team together to align on takeaways, surface open questions, and generate hypotheses. Through our design research process, we realized that what would suit the PEU specialist the best was a single-page, long-scrolling reader. This would help specialists have more conversational interactions with residents, which would in turn make it easier for residents to complete the screener faster. We mocked up a single-page, long-scrolling screener designed for use on tablets, and then we also just tested this with specialists over 4 phases of prototyping, testing, and iteration. This is a demo, just a quick demo of what the Access NYC looks like on your desktop, but you can see the difference here with the PEU screener tablet. You can see this sort of long scrolling. So one of the things we realized is that trust in government and trust in technology are interconnected for residents. If we build strong, useful, and dependable products for them, this can help us better relationship and also demystify any stigmas around the difficulties of working with government. So one of our more deeper ways of engaging with the city is through our Designing for Opportunity partnership, where we're working closely with the community-based strategies team over at the Administration for Children's Services for the next 12 months to understand the journey families take through prevention services and to help ACS to better understand and deliver programming that empowers families, meets their needs, and elevate their voices. So the Division for Prevention Services is currently in the process of planning and executing a needs assessment and service matching analysis of the entire prevention system to inform the procurement of new contracts for all prevention programs citywide in 2020. So this expansive procurement has a budget of approximately $300 million and sets the standard for practice and quality of services of over 200 programs citywide. It's a unique opportunity to employ design tactics and tools to ensure the perspective and experiences of children, families, and providers. We call this partnership Pathways to Prevention. The Division of Prevention Services within ACS is responsible for overseeing community-based programs that support families through counseling, case management, and clinical therapy in order to promote protective factors and prevent children from entering foster care. They operate the largest and most diverse continuum of evidence-based and evidence-informed prevention programs in any jurisdiction in the country, serving 44,000 children per year in over 200 programs and contracting 54 community-based organizations. Families who receive prevention services are predominantly low-income and people of color who face challenges that impact their ability to care for children. And services include case management, evidence-based family therapy, substance abuse treatment, and support for families who experience trauma, domestic violence, and mental or physical health issues. Our partnership will look at understanding what opportunities there are to amplify family voice and choice with a focus on this question. So how might we engage families and service providers to develop and implement an accessible, dignified service matching and delivery experience? So we're really looking at where in prevention services are there opportunities for families to advocate for the services they need and where is there room to create and enhance a positive client experience. We're doing things differently with this partnership. So aside from the actual engagement itself, on the periphery, we're also working closely with the team to embed methods into the core team we're working with and spread those methodologies across ACS at large. We're in the middle of working on developing design modules inspired from the engagement and planning agency-wide learning sessions. Even after our partnership ends, we see this as a huge opportunity to build design capacity within the city. So even from the beginning of our partnership, we've been engaging the community-based strategies team here and using design methodologies to plan and structure our partnership. So these following images are some of the things that we've done with them. We've worked together to understand those who use, administer, and govern the service and turn that into a stakeholder list, which unveils potential research targets. ACS has also helped us, and you can see us building a journey map here, but they've helped us build an early stage initial journey map of how a family engages and interacts with the service matching and delivery process. And so we kind of put that down on paper here after doing that mapping session, and we use this to identify where we wanted to focus ourselves. We'll be looking at how families engage or enter prevention services, what it's like to be matched to a prevention service, and what it looks and feels like when a family undergoes a prevention service. Right now, we've already kicked off with them. We've done all the things I've told you, and we've also gone through a first sprint with internal ACS staff. We're in the middle of starting to talk to prevention providers and planning out our final research sprint with families and communities, which will happen in August or so, or late summer. And then we'll be synthesizing our research, preparing co-design workshops to validate what we learn, and later on in the engagement, we'll be prototyping a few opportunities and turning out a report and some other findings. So I hope that this gives you a strong overview of what our studio is up to these days, but for more information, you can follow us on civicservicedesign.com. Thanks so much, and I'll hand it over. Hello, everyone. I'm just pulling up my screen here. And my name is Sasha Easton, and I'm with Arapahoe Douglas Works Workforce Center. So Arapahoe Douglas Works Workforce Center is part of the Workforce Development Centers nationwide. What we do is we serve individuals with barriers to employment to help either them find employment, if they're underemployed, find better employment, upskill, and we also work with employers to make sure that they have the appropriate talent to serve their needs as well within the community. Arapahoe Douglas Works serves approximately 40,000 individuals per year, either digitally or in person, and we serve individuals 14 and up on an economic diverse scale, educational diverse scale, and age band scale. So we really, our goal is to anyone that walks in our doors to help them in the best way that we can to ensure that they get on a pathway to success and meet their personal milestones to improve their economic security and economic impact locally. So Arapahoe Douglas Works got involved with human-centered design in 2015. Our former director learned about human-centered design through an initiative that was a collaborative effort between Department of Labor, IDEO, the Innovation and Opportunity Network, and Mayor and Mayor. They ran a human-centered design challenge innovation lab in which government entities, community organizations, nonprofits could work together along a timeline to go through the human-centered design methodology and work through a particular problem. At the culmination of that process, we had an opportunity to get together with other practitioners to do a learning exchange and kind of share our experience with human-centered design and what our outcomes were. And just wanted to share some additional resources to help you get on your human-centered design journey. IDEO has great curriculum on the human-centered design methodology. For our initial project, we utilized their design kit heavily and really relied upon that. And then the Innovation and Opportunity Network, it's specific to workforce development, but they have a lot of resources available to help you navigate through that process. Arapahoe Douglas Works is 100% grant funded, so predominantly our funds come from the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, which has programs for adult job seekers, dislocated worker job seekers, and individuals with really no eligibility attached. We have kind of more basic career services available for those individuals, and then we also receive funding from our community partners and county partners for SNAP employment and training services, individuals that are attached to that program, TANF. We also have grants for individuals that are justice involved, individuals that have disabilities, mature job seekers, as well. So we really work with a diverse population to help ensure that we're getting individuals on a pathway to success. And human-centered design has been an integral part of that process since we began utilizing it in 2015. Really, human-centered design, you want to start with having kind of an open mindset and kind of a place of positivity and openness to change. Kind of one of the first tenets is creative confidence. So just really recognizing that solutions are possible even when you're trying to tackle large global problems. You just need to remember not to overcomplicate things and really kind of, you know, the old adage, take one bite at the elephant at a time. But I think having that creative confidence to be able to tackle those large and small problems is a key tenet to human-centered design. Also knowing that you are going to fail, and I think as a practitioner, we don't want to fail in our opportunities or processes that we're trying to implement. However, knowing that in a human-centered design process, failure is something that will happen. You're going to embrace it, learn from it, and move forward, and it is part of the process. And it also helps you continue to redesign your prototypes to make them more impactful in the long run. Also, I mentioned kind of having that right attitude, that optimism, knowing that the work that you're investing, the time and effort and facilitation that is happening is ultimately going to lead to an impact. And even small changes, small tweaks to what you're currently doing can have a huge impact to your end user, to your partners, or to your staff. And really, one of the main components of human-centered design is iteration. So really making sure that you're involving the end user in the process of the design and that they're part of that strategic vision, and that you are prototyping in a way where you're able to get the end product out to market. It might not be the end stage results, but you're able to get that feedback as quickly as possible, so then you can turn around and make those adjustments as needed. So with human-centered design, there's really, generally speaking, three kind of stages of the process. So there's the inspiration stage, the ideation stage, and the implementation stage. The inspiration stage is really where your organization and your design team is trying to understand what is the issue you're trying to solve, what is the problem, what is the challenge. So really trying to understand what your end users are needing, what's lacking, what you might need to step in and kind of walk through their shoes and see the process through their eyes. And really this is kind of where you begin to identify, okay, what is the issue we're going to try to design for. In the ideation phase, this is really where you're brainstorming and able to kind of map out what are the components you need to plan for, what are potential barriers, what are threats, what are themes, and then really kind of involving the end user in that process to understand what they perceive to be working well, what they perceive to not be working well, and what are things that you might not even be aware of. And at this point, you kind of begin to develop insight statements where you create a how might we question. So really that's open-ended so that you're not trying to solve the problem before you have all the data and research. And it's really the phase where you begin to prototype and obtain that user feedback and develop iterations of the various prototypes. The implementation phase, you know, it's going to happen at multiple intervals and multiple times throughout the process. So really, you know, once you kind of have a design question and you're moving towards solving that and prototyping, again, wanting to get something to be released as quickly as possible to begin getting that feedback. You don't want to spend a lot of time designing for that perfect process or that perfect product or that perfect program, because if you miss the mark, you've invested all that time and effort for nothing. So really, it's for those of you that might be familiar with the project management methodology of Agile, it's very similar. You want to get that minimum viable product out to the community so you could begin getting feedback to see what's working well, what isn't, and you could start making those adjustments real time. So when you're kind of in that ideation phase, that brainstorming phase, and really that research and gathering phase, there are 4 basic ways to kind of go about it. You want to make sure that you're interviewing the end user. And so I think one of the key takeaways we learned is you want to interview both the extremes and mainstreams, your typical end user and your atypical end user. So for example, at Arapahoe Douglas Works, our priority is serving those with multiple barriers. So we wanted to make sure that we're involving individuals that are homeless, low income, single parents, those that have disabilities, those that have offender backgrounds, but also we also serve individuals that were laid off through their tech job making 6 figures a year. We want to make sure that we're also involving those individuals in the process, and you have the full spectrum of end users and how they might utilize that process or product. Also, you want to make sure that you're interviewing other experts on the topic. So are there other government agencies that are trying to tackle similar problems and have done various iterations of solving that? Are there other nonprofits, community partners, private sector enterprises that you could lean on, shadow, interview, ask those open-ended questions? You also want to make sure that you're immersing yourself and really trying to understand the path that the end user is taking and what that might look like. Do you have blind customers? Understanding what challenges they might have. Are there accessibility issues? Are there learning disabilities, language barriers? Whatever that might look like, really trying to understand what possible barriers your end user could potentially encounter and trying to design for that. And then also doing analogous observations. So looking at entities that have designed for similar issues. So if you're trying to tackle improving customer service, perhaps maybe looking at a private entity that has phenomenal customer service. What have they incorporated? What have they done, either on a larger or smaller scale, and what can you take from that? So when we began initially in 2015 to begin tackling our problem, we wanted a design team that was reflective of individuals that were at varying levels within our organization, that had varying skill sets, varying involvement with the Workforce Center. So we involved leadership sponsors at all levels, frontline staff. Our particular problem initially had to do with youth, opportunity youth specifically. So we had end user customers sit in on our design team and their guardians or their that one person that they depend on in life, whatever that person might be, community partners and board members. So when we were in that inspiration phase, we really kind of had to try to figure out what we knew and what we still needed to learn. So, and kind of having that open, creative mindset. And so this really led to our question, our design challenge question, evolving. We really wanted to make sure that we were having impactful service delivery for opportunity youth and that they were accessing it and it was relevant, meaningful to them. But we wanted to be open to what that looks like. So kind of as we began kind of through the inspiration phase, we designed our challenge question to be, how might we drive and increase out-of-school young adults to realize the value in accessing our programming and resources? So components of doing that entailed, we really needed to rebrand our program and market it in a new way. We wanted to make sure that all our key stakeholders were part of our focus groups and that we had more impactful community outreach and engagement with our partners, and that to be mindful of having continuous feedback throughout the entire process of not only our end users, but of our staff and our partners. And relationship building was a key component. We wanted to make sure that our staff were a big part of the process, so they were bought in and understood the value of changing our processes and our service delivery, and then also making sure youth were a part of the process so that they know we really were listening to them and we're trying to design programming to meet their needs from their perspective. So when we were in the ideation and research phase, we wanted to take note of recurring themes and potential barriers. So we made sure to have numerous focus groups. So we had focus groups just with youth, we had focus groups just with community partners, we had focus groups just with staff. We mixed populations, but we really wanted to make sure that we were capturing their feedback. And intuitively, we knew some of the themes that might emerge and some that were completely new. So some of the things that came about through our focus groups is we're currently located in southeast Denver, and Denver, unfortunately, doesn't have quite the infrastructure that Manhattan has in terms of public transportation. We do have bus transportation as well as a light rail system, however, it's very spread out. And so youth had expressed that for some of them, to just get to our center, it was a 2-hour bus ride. And so when you're an individual that has other barriers to employment, you might be a single parent, you might have a learning disability, you might not be a native speaker, taking 2 hours out of your time to just come meet with someone is a significant hurdle. Also, there was a lot of concern about government stigma, the arduous nature of our paperwork and how difficult that process was, and just some of our youth had difficulty obtaining the documentation to just become eligible. They might have been recently incarcerated, so they don't have access to their Social Security cards or IDs, and so some of these challenges were huge hurdles in just accessing our services. But one of the things we wanted to make sure to do was have the end user part of the focus, not only be part of the focus group, but we actually had youth facilitate the focus groups. And we learned that that was even more productive because youth were more likely to share and be open and honest with someone of their own age and demographic than they were of a staff member. Again, going back to that government stigma. So, and it was a great leadership opportunity and skill building opportunity for our youth as well. So we really found that to be an excellent practice and continuing to do that moving forward. One, in kind of going back to the transportation issue, one of the things we really tried to do to kind of immerse ourselves into the experience of the end user is the individuals on the design team. We took that 2-hour bus ride just to see what it's like switching buses and what it feels like, and you know, with no air conditioning in the middle of summer. So really trying to help make sure that we understand where they're coming from. So as part of the focus group, one of the things that the youth discussed is that they really recommended we rebrand our program. And so, and they were a part of that process. In fact, they drove the entire rebranding. So on the left, you'll see our former marketing, and on the right is the marketing that the youth helped create. So they determined all the language, the colors, the graphics, the taglines, everything, and then they also helped disseminate it in the community. And so on the left, they affectionately called our former programming our McDonald's branding, and now they kind of designed our new program, which is now Future You, Your Path, Your Potential. One other kind of notable facet that we learned is the young adults did not like being referred to as youth. Many of them had multiple jobs, they were raising families, they had served in the military. They did not see themselves as youth, they saw themselves as young adults. So we really had to change our vernacular in not referring them as youth. So in terms of kind of rebranding our program, trying to have more meaningful programming, more meaningful relationships with our participants, we have seen our outcomes increase, and in some pretty significant ways. So really kind of our original design challenge question was to increase the participation of opportunity young adults into our WIOA program. And in 2015, when we started with human-centered design, 79% of all of our young adult participants were out-of-school youth. That climbed to 86% in 2016, and now in 2017, over 93% of all of our young adult programming accounts for opportunity youth who are out of school. So we are continuing to see increases. Also, our performance indicators have exponentially increased. Our youth are obtaining jobs quicker, they're retaining them, and at a higher wage. So it's really rewarding to kind of see those positive outcomes. Since we've done this process beginning in 2015, we have worked on other human-centered design challenges since then. So some of the other things we've been working on is we're really trying to revamp our customer triage process. We really want to ensure that we have that no wrong door philosophy, and that anybody that comes in any of our entry points is getting services and getting connected to resources immediately. We were finding that it wasn't happening in that manner, that individuals would come in, they'd go to an intake session, and they wouldn't start getting connected to resources until they were assigned a case manager. So we revamped our entire process that all of our frontline staff at those entry points, they triage the customer to ask those open-ended questions, what barriers they might be facing, what are their needs in terms of labor market or job search or interviewing. So we're connecting them to those skill sets and resources immediately. So that's been a big change to our processes and procedures. We're also revamping our entire staff onboarding because we want to make sure that our staff have the tools and resources and skills to make sure that the programming that they're delivering to our customers is as impactful as possible. So the basic tenets of case management, how to build that rapport, how to work with individuals who might have a disability, how to work with individuals who have mental health issues, what are resources for justice-involved participants. And this staff onboarding is not only happening when we have new staff, but throughout the time of their tenure. So we have things at quarterly intervals, biannual intervals, yearly intervals, to really make sure that our staff who are working one-on-one with the customers have those resources and tools and skill sets. And then one of the kind of continual feedback we get from our customers is about our arduous paperwork, eligibility, enrollment processes, because we are government and are very compliance driven because we're federally and state funded, is we've worked with our county IT department to build an electronic document management system. So now all of our eligibility and case management paperwork are now electronic, and then also within that we've built in a workflow system so that internally we could see where the bottlenecks are in our processes so we could address them more efficiently and quickly to ensure that the service delivery continuously happens. And then we also have electronic signature now, and it's all web-based, so customers can access our services and begin the enrollment process anywhere where there's internet access. And this actually just our first prototype, not our end user prototype, but our first iteration just actually debuted this week. So it's very exciting for the electronic document management system. Lessons learned through our human-centered design process. I think as government and being very compliance-driven, regulations-driven at the county, state, and federal level, don't fear failure, get to doing, make sure that you're moving forward, gaining that feedback and getting those prototypes out for feedback as quickly as possible. Make sure you have your end user input throughout the entire process, and continually, even once you have your end product implemented, make sure you're still getting that feedback. Technology changes may have had an impact, customer needs may have evolved, demographics may have changed. In our world, unemployment may look different. So make sure that you're continually getting feedback even after you roll out the final product. Small changes really can make a big difference. I think we naturally want to solve the world's problems, but know that small tweaks to current processes can have a big impact. One example that we did is we moved from a group enrollment process to a one-on-one enrollment process. From our perspective, it was much more time intensive. However, our outcomes and customer service increased dramatically because our staff were able to build that rapport from day one as opposed to it being delayed even further, and we were able to better address that government stigma that they were already feeling when coming in our doors. Make sure that you prototype in phases. Again, don't spend a lot of time to craft that end result because you want to get that feedback because you might have missed the mark in one or more ways, and so you don't want to spend a lot of time and then it all be for naught. Make sure you're continuing to reevaluate that product, that process, whatever that new human-centered design product is. Change management is a huge component. You need to make sure that the change management is happening at the staff level, at the participant level, partner level, and just creating that awareness, that desire, that knowledge, that ability, and reinforcing that. And then just collaboration. Make sure that you have individuals on your design team with differing opinions, differing skill sets from different walks of life. Make sure you have your end user a part of the design team as well, your partners. Have that high executive level leadership sponsorship as well. That's just going to make your team stronger and more effective. And if you'd like to reach out to me or ask for more information, here's my contact information, but I appreciate everybody's time and I'm excited to be able to share some challenges and some successes that we've had here in Colorado.
I'd like to thank all of our speakers for some really enlightening and exciting presentations today. We do have about 15 minutes left for Q&A. We have a couple of questions already typed into the box, so for those of you who are with us and have a question for any of our panelists, please feel free to go ahead and use that Q&A feature to type in your thoughts. We're going to go ahead and get started with some questions that have been posted. One is perhaps more of a comment or pointing out a human-centered design opportunity for you, Blair. We have a comment about efforts that were made to standardize job postings on USA.jobs.gov, which unfortunately that standardization process resulted in difficulty for people wishing to post jobs who maybe didn't have, couldn't comply with mandates or where the standardized process didn't really work for their own particular situation. So Blair, I don't know if you have any experience with USA.jobs.gov or whether you might think about reaching out to some colleagues there.
Yeah, no, actually, we have a partnership with USA Jobs. It's actually one of our longest running design projects. So we work very closely with them. And so a few years ago, maybe 3 years ago, we did do a huge design research experience across the country, interviewing thousands of individuals, and we learned a lot. Michelle's correct. We have been trying to update the JOA on USA Jobs, but what we've realized is that there are some HR policy issues that have to change in order to make some of the design changes that are needed and that we would recommend. And so our team is dutifully working closely with the USA Jobs team to try to figure out how to manage that. Because what's interesting is that some of the things that seem easy and intuitive are actually and we thought would be easy to change were actually behind it were policy requirements. So we're trying to figure out how to make some of those changes. So it's I'd be happy to, if you're interested in more information on that and a timeline for that, I'd be happy if you email me or reach out. I'd be happy to connect you to the folks on our team that work on that. But that's what I know.
Thank you, Blair. Then we have another question that I think really came up during Mari's presentation, and that had to do with, sort of moves to make government services accessible online, but then concerns about the digital divide for low-income families and making sure that as the world moves towards an increasingly digital space, how do we make sure that people aren't left behind? Mari, I don't know if that came up during your work with Access NYC or if you can speak to that.
Yeah, I think this is referring to Access NYC, but yeah, in regard to Access NYC, it's a mobile-friendly first platform, and when we did the research work, a lot of the folks we're reaching out to, they do own mobile phones and smartphones. So we designed a lot of this to be mobile friendly. But I think the other thing is, and also that the case I was talking about with the PEU specialists, those guys were the ones going door to door to help do the enrollment and walk residents through enrollment. So those who may not have had access to internet were able to get screened through them. And then if they weren't able to either text or email the information, those PEU specialists also did carry paper forms to be able to write down information about how to follow up. This whole Access NYC thing is really, the infrastructure, operational structure around this is not just the platform itself, but we have a whole product management team as well as an outreach team who goes out and really tries to, let people know, especially in the boroughs that are the hardest to reach, to know that these benefits exist, and also give them the tools and the information in paper, in person, of like where they could physically go to enroll in benefits as well.
Thanks, Mari. So I have a question, actually, and Sasha, this is a question for you. I was really struck by what you said about how engaging your staff also let you, it was a way of engaging the service users as well.
Yeah.
One of the concerns I think about government, and I think perhaps one of the concerns about being willing to fail, is that it's hard to fail as government in front of your users, right? Like if there's already this government stigma, and then they come in and you're like, well, we're trying this out, but we're not sure if it's really going to work. I'm sure that's not what you said. But how do you create an environment or a setting where your service users are sort of willing to tolerate that, that kind of iterative approach?
Well, I think it's letting them know that we're open to change and know that we could get better as a service organization, and recognizing that, and that we want their opinions and feedback on what that could look like. And I think when you present that to an end user, more than likely people are willing to kind of share their experience and where they think you're doing really well and where they think that there's opportunity for improvement. And I think there were other tactics beyond just being kind of open and vulnerable about us just wanting to get better as an agency and as a service provider, but also there were other things that we did when we had focus groups or Q&As. We made sure to have food because we didn't know if that's the only food that that person's going to have that day. So we had a variety of hot and cold food options and drinks. We also were able to, through another grant that we had, provide incentives on some occasions for individuals that participated in more in-depth manners. And that was, it looked like gift cards for local establishments or gift cards to buy groceries, things like that. So I think we try to come at it in a variety of ways of just appealing that we really want their feedback, but then also incentivizing their effort and their time, and then also showing that appreciation through making sure it's a comfortable environment, it's a safe environment, it's an open environment, and has, you know, food and drinks, and that we're there at a variety of times and days of the week, and that we're just there to listen, and that they're really driving the conversation.
Thank you, Sasha. Blair, you said something really interesting in your presentation that struck me, and that was to ask questions when told no. So can you talk about maybe some of the challenges that you've encountered when you're working with partners? You know, there probably are levels of engagement, right? That some people are really excited about this as a strategy and some people may be more skeptical. So how do you, what have been some ways in which you've been able to convince folks that this is a good way to go?
Yeah. Yeah, you know, it's a tough balance because as everyone I know on the phone understands, I mean, the government's role is to provide services, but it's also to protect, right, the best interests of the service, you know, best interest of the citizen. So I think we often, and Sasha spoke to this, I think we often question ourselves and maybe are a little more risk averse because we don't want to do anything to put citizens or our country, you know, in peril. And so I think we are a little bit more cautious and careful in that regard. And so I think especially when there are new ways of doing things that people don't know, so they're a little bit more uncomfortable with, I think more people are more likely to not want to engage. But I think what we've seen to be really successful is, one, not calling it a new thing because as I shared, I mean, it's really borrowing from a lot of methodologies and things that already exist. So it's just using tools and techniques sometimes in different ways. And so doing activities and getting people comfortable with what we're doing and using their language instead of using some of the, jargon that sometimes is associated with it. And then I think sometimes there's a thought that we're asking you to throw out your expertise in the way you do things, and I think that that's a lot of my role as a design strategist, is to figure out where design best fits in what you do. Is it to leverage something that you're doing really well or enhance already, or is it a gap? You know, and because we know a lot of things in government work really well, and so we use design to make things even better, to figure out how it can be applied best in the different agencies. And so for different offices across the government, our interventions have looked very different, right? Because everybody has different ways of working, different missions, and different technical expertise that human-centered design cannot actually do without. I mean, we need that. So I think it's kind of also laying the groundwork, letting people know that. Like, I think sometimes people are threatened by that, thinking that we're telling them that what they know isn't right, when in reality, actually, for human-centered design to work appropriately, we need their skills and expertise. We need them to be bringing that to the table and sharing that with the other folks that are at the table trying to design. So I think those are some of the things that I would say. But I think, what is great about human-centered design is that it's really compatible, I think, with bureaucracy and the policy process. I mean, both are supposed to be iterative. But I think what's great about design specifically is that it allows you to test things in really low fidelity at a low-cost, low-risk way, so we can, really invest taxpayer dollars in things that we know are going to work. And so I think that that's what's really exciting about it, and where when people get comfortable with it and understand that, they really latch on and are into it.
Great, thank you. And then one last question, and this is for Mari. Mari, you've been able to interact with a variety of different agencies across New York City and also outside of the city. Has there been an agency or a problem that came to you where you were like, I would never have thought of this as a design opportunity, but now that I'm presented with it, wow. What's been the most surprising project that you've worked on in your time with the design studio?
Let's see. I'm trying to think about. I think there was one with Health and Human Services around mapping the rat infestation in the city, and just really trying to understand how to do that, how to visualize that, and how to address that, and what that meant for residents and in terms of sanitation. That one was a really quirky one, but also we were able to advise on how to approach that, and it ended up being really a lot of consultation around just developing like a digital type of visual infographic around that. I'm also trying to think. I'm trying to dig really deep to see if we've got anything kind of quirky or unexpected. I think why it's a little bit difficult for me is because even though we've almost reached 100 office hours, every person that comes into the room with us, we come in with the attitude of, there's nothing that design can't solve. And I think that's something that both Blair and Sasha kind of touched on in their presentations as well. It's like we're just obsessed with problem solving anything. And so if there's something messy or if there's something complex, we don't try to just find like the end solution to it. We start asking a lot of questions to find out where there might be a slight tweak. Is it to a form? Is it to is it just to a meeting, around changing the agenda around for a meeting so you can get, more stakeholders at the table, that kind of thing. So I think we kind of tackle it that way. I hope that kind of answers the question.
That was great. Thank you, Mari. And I think that's actually a great comment on which to wrap up.
Well, I think we lost Edith. Oh, Edith, are you there?
I'm here. I'm so sorry. I have been having audio challenges today. So My apologies. Thank you so much to our panelists, Blair, Corcoran, Castillo, Mari Nakano, and Sasha Easton for just a really fascinating glimpse into the world of human-centered design. As Mari was saying, I think you sold me. There's nothing that design can't tackle. So thank you for a job well done, mission accomplished. As promised, I wanted to give people a heads up about the third webinar in our series this summer. That will be happening the week of August 20th. Please stay tuned for the exact date and time. But that webinar will focus on the changing nature of work. And the panelists will talk about how new approaches to employment services that are aimed at helping job seekers adapt to the new reality of the changing labor market. We know that independent workers make up almost 30% of the American workforce. That is projected to grow significantly by 2025, and the workspace itself is evolving with new technologies, outsourcing, and more flexibility. So how do we as human service providers help workers get the training, technology tools, and financial and business literacy they need to help them succeed in the 21st century labor market? So please join us in August for that. Registration information will be circulated through the NAWRS membership list. So if you are not on that list, please visit NAWRS.org to sign up. Once again, many thanks to Apt Associates for sponsoring today's webinar. The recording will be available on the NAWRS website. And thank you so much, everybody. Have a great afternoon.